Episode 201, Navigating a Split Faith Marriage with Jennifer Barnhart.
Welcome to Latter-day Life Coaches, the podcast where each episode is a conversation between me, Heather Rackham, and one of my amazing coach colleagues. Each coach here is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and a highly trained, experienced life coach making a great impact in the lives of their clients. And together, we have one main goal, helping you live your best life no matter what. You ready for this conversation with the coach? Here we go.
In this episode, host Heather is joined by life coach Jennifer Barnhart, who specializes in supporting women whose husbands and children have left the church. Jennifer opens up about her personal journey through a split faith marriage, describing the shock, grief, and emotional processing that came with her husband's decision to leave the church. With vulnerability and wisdom, Jennifer shares how she found ways to strengthen her faith, deepen her spiritual practices, and maintain her marriage through open communication and intentional connection. She emphasizes the importance of calming the nervous system, finding spiritual resilience, and embracing ambiguity while holding on to core beliefs. Heather and Jennifer discuss the balance between vulnerability and strength in relationships, highlighting practical tools for everyone facing similar challenges. We hope you enjoyed this episode.
Hey, everybody. Welcome today. I am joined by Coach Jennifer Barnhart. Hey, Jennifer.
Hey, Heather, it's so nice to see you.
It is so nice to see you too. Jennifer has been on with me a couple times before. So if you missed those episodes, you should go back to listen to them because they are very good. In fact, I was just telling Jennifer that I was rereading a book today that she mentioned in one of those podcast episodes. I have referenced it many times and I think it's very helpful. But anyway, so go back and listen to those. But if you haven't listened to them, I want you to know about Jennifer before we get started. So Jennifer, can you introduce yourself for us?
Thank you, Heather. I'm so glad to be here and I'd love to introduce myself. So I'm a woman, wife, mother, and grandmother. I'm a sister, an aunt, and a friend, and all of those relationships have a really special meaning to me. And so I try to be mindful and present with each of those individual relationships. I'm a believer. The whole plan of happiness has always made sense to me. To me, it's like a real life fairy tale, and I'm the heroine. And I believe I have heavenly parents and that I'm on a journey toward them, and that both Jesus and the Holy Spirit are here to help me on my journey. I'm also a gardener, and I love everything about gardening, especially flower gardening. So anything that's connected to that, from finding the seeds to planting them and fertilizing them, watering and nurturing, and the whole idea of supporting them. Trellises have brought all kinds of new meaning into my life. And then harvesting and sharing the fruits of my labors. And I'm a life coach who works with women whose husbands and children have left the church. And I support the woman who wants to stay and grow her spiritual life.
That was a beautiful explanation of you and fits you perfectly because the time that I've got to spend with you, everything in that statement is true. And you are so easy to have a conversation with. You are always very present and very connected. And anyway, so I know that people will feel that from you today. And especially the topic that we're talking about today, I think it does require a coach like you, somebody who is very intentional in relationships, someone who's very intentional in what they say and careful in what they say, because this can be a hard topic of conversation. So, and it's very personal to you. So I'm grateful that you're willing to share your story with us today.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I guess let's just jump right in. And if I ask you anything that you're like, yeah, I don't want to answer that, or that feels maybe too personal, you just let me know. But I know as a coach and specifically who you work with is people whose husbands have left the church, that comes for you naturally, like because of personal experience. So do you mind sharing your experience of your husband leaving the church?
No, I'm happy
I
to.
guess I should say, does your husband gonna care? Does it, what is this?
And no, and he actually, I don't think he cares either because we've talked about it so much.
Mhm.
And actually you kind of have to make sense of the story. So as I've processed it, there's a narrative around that. He struggled with the church for a long time. And he's if you know him, he's this just cute, happy-go-lucky guy that just good-natured. And anyway, he became really depressed. He was struggling with the church for a long time. Took me a while to recognize it, but he was really struggling. And what he was struggling with was his relationship with God. And none of this was a mystery to me. We talked about it, but we were both seeing the same therapist, not at the same time, separately. And one day she asked me what I'd do if my husband left the church. And it's like something I'd never thought of before. I had never thought of it, but it wasn't too long after that that he did stop attending. And I was totally taken off guard. It's like it never entered my thought. And I've had quite a bit of experience with other people in my situation. There are ones that don't know anything about it and they are totally taken off guard. But even the ones that have kind of gone through the struggle with their husbands, it's like we never really thought it would happen,
Mhm.
that it wasn't actually going to happen. And the other thing that I didn't realize at the time is what a huge difference that it would make in our life together and our relationships. And for me, because it felt like a life quake, I got stuck for a really long time in things that weren't very helpful. Both thoughts and feelings just totally stuck. So that was about 9 years ago. He stopped coming to church, and he will come if we have family that is in town that attends church. He'll come. He'll also come if I invite him to come. And he occasionally will come at Christmas or Easter. But other than that, he's just not interested in the church anymore.
I can imagine, and as in conversations that you and I have had, that though that was you called it a life quake. Is that what you called it? Like a life
Yes.
quake
Yeah.
situation? I love that phrase. And not what you expected, that this is like the communication that I would have to imagine that you guys have in order to have this relationship continue to work with those differences, that you have, like, your communication has to be better than I would probably. Did that grow? Has your relationship grown?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
And again, it was learning to be intentional about our communication.
Yeah.
And we eventually developed kind of a whole list of questions that we needed to talk about and decide on. And the first year that we did that, we wrote it all down pretty much. We made an agreement and signed it.
Mhm.
And then we've dragged it out pretty much every year since to look through it and see if there's anything different that we need to talk about, decide on, and essentially renew for the next
Yeah.
year.
I think that's amazing because you can look at relationships, and this is something that I have learned from one of my mentors and teachers, Amy Gianni, but there's a spectrum, right? Like on one end of the spectrum in relationships, it's like you have the pretend, polite, and parallel marriages or relationships in general, where it's kind of like, don't ruffle the feathers, just kind of don't really dig deep. We just kind of want to have this polite, kind relationship, but that also does lead to something that's kind of pretend. It's not necessarily getting to the guts and the heart, and heart and soul of a relationship. On the opposite end, there's this connected, and honest, and if you want a connected relationship, an honest relationship, it's kind of messy, and you have to be willing to. It's a lot messy, actually, and you have to be willing to ask the questions and answer the questions. And people think they want that, but it is pretty hard to get to that.
I was going to say, until you try it and
Yeah.
realize how much work that is.
Yes.
And honestly, I know that you know that relationships go like this.
Yep.
And
up and down, up and down.
So we have times where we are both willing to communicate and be open and hammer out some of those hard things. And then there's other times where it's like, let's just avoid it and pretend.
Yeah. I'm so grateful to hear that, because I think that is so true. I mean, but anyway, just to know that the option is there, right? And if things get messy, it doesn't mean that things have gone terribly wrong. It just means that you're working on a more connected and honest relationship. And that's a really important thing if that's what you want.
Well, and sometimes you want to rest from working on being connected all the time. Yes. And there's nothing wrong with that either.
Yeah, absolutely.
That so both ends. I mean, marriages for a long time. We just celebrated our 46th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations.
So we've had a few years to work on this.
Yeah. Great perspective. And so, and really true. So thank you for sharing that. Like that they do go up and down, and there is place for both of those ends of the spectrum. But okay, so how would you say it feels as a believing wife when your husband no longer believes? Like, here you are, everything's changed from what you thought that it was going to be.
Yeah, so I'm kind of looking at it from the just finding out first year or whatever. And so I said that I was taken off guard, and I was. And there is so much shock and disbelief. I can't believe this is happening to me. And what I've noticed with me and some other people is that the first thing that you do is that you want to deny and avoid it. And, and I keep thinking of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden when they find out they're naked, and it's like, run, hide, so you hide, you ignore things. There's a coaching term about buffering. So you get really busy with things that don't matter or things that aren't helpful, and do those instead of focus on that. I was embarrassed a lot. I mean, that's all part of the run and hide. And I've talked to some other women that feel exactly the same way. My embarrassment sort of stemmed from, how could this happen? How could I not let it know? I was recently talking to somebody where her embarrassment was like, she felt like people were thinking, can't you even keep your marriage together? So really being embarrassed. And then that fight or flight response that we talk about all the time. There's some other parts of it, the freezing or fawning, or I've recently heard about flopping. And basically, I would say I'm a freezer and occasionally a fawner. And yes, I do flop. It's just like not gonna deal with this. That's it. I'm done.
Maybe I'm a flopper. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's a response.
Yeah.
It's a response. When I said it's a life quake, okay, that's a real thing.
Yeah.
There are times where we have such a big upheaval that you just get really worked up about it. So I also found that I got stuck in the being mad and the blame. And, that therapist that I talked about earlier, she said, you're going to get mad at your husband. Well, I pretty much didn't. That might be part of the avoiding. I didn't want to be mad at him, but I was mad at everybody else, including myself and other people, maybe in my family or my friends and at the church. So I was pretty mad. You and I have talked about thought tornadoes before. So those are those repetitive thoughts. Those are the ones that, and I talked about being stuck. So those are the ones that keep you stuck because they just go round and round and round. And they keep you all really worked up all the time. And interestingly enough, All of these are normal and natural reactions. And you should expect them, and they're okay. It doesn't mean anything bad has happened. Even though your brain is screaming and yelling at you that something terrible is happening. But they are things that can keep you stuck. And something that's happening at exactly the same time that you're getting all worked up and stuck, your husband feels relief.
Yeah.
Because they've been doing that, and now they feel better because they've come out.
Yep.
So much pressure has been removed, and they're excited and eager to share with you all the things that they've discovered about the church that they think you don't know. So that adds to your distress.
Yeah. Is there grief in there? I would say grief has to be in there.
That's what I was going to say, is all of those, every one of those are steps of grief.
Yeah.
And so, yes, grief, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
You're experiencing grief, but it's not really traditional.
Right.
Because even though it feels like something has died, nothing really has. And yet it has.
Right. Right. So how did you support yourself through this phase? Because I would imagine that you're probably not getting a lot of support from any place else.
No,
people probably don't even, and especially if you said you were embarrassed, you're probably not sharing a whole lot too about it.
Yeah, you're not saying anything, and there isn't a ton of support. So, you and I through our work know a little bit about the brain. So the primitive, the lower part of the brain, it wants to tell you everything is dangerous. It always warns us of danger. And what happens right when you're doing all this, all of that is in overdrive. And this is all you can focus on. It takes all of your energy. But, we talked about grief, and we're kind of describing some of those reactions. You feel weepy, out of sorts. You feel like I felt alarmed all the time. And, as I've looked back and I've come to start thinking about it, the natural man in the scriptures. Okay, so I realized that that's what we're feeling is, I never refer to it as the natural man. I always refer to it as the natural woman because that's more relatable to me. But the natural woman thinks that everything outside of herself controls her. Everything, she's being controlled. She's at the mercy of events and others, and she kind of doesn't know who or what to trust. But here's the thing, we can control our thoughts. That's the whole purpose of our journey here on earth, is to learn to use our agency to control our path. So you first have to calm the nervous system before you can move past it. And I have kind of a list of things that I've learned to do to help calm my nervous system. And I'm going to share some of them with you because they may resonate with some of the people that are listening. But one of the things I did was started taking walks, and I often had a purpose for my walk. But one of my favorites was a 5 senses walk, and it brought me right back into myself to be concentrating on what I'm smelling, what I'm hearing. That actually is one of my favorite senses now, is what I was hearing, what I could see, what I could touch. And then depending upon the time of year, there might be some taste in there. But I would spend time walking. I did a lot of writing, and I learned about something called morning pages, where you get up first thing in the morning and just write for 3 pages and basically dump everything out. But as I refined that, I started doing prayer letters, and basically it's, dear God, this is what's on my mind this morning. And I again would just write quickly and dump it all out and then be done with it. I didn't keep any of those. I threw them away. I didn't really want anybody to be reading them. I learned about breathing, and I would practice that a lot. I did a lot of guided meditation, some visualization, and some prayers. And I as I was thinking about this, I thought I would share one of my favorites that I've been using again. I've used it over a couple of years,
Oh, good.
and every time it just gets better and better. So it's been really helpful for me. I took a meditation class from Thomas McConkie, who is LDS.
And
Um,
brilliant. Yes.
yes, yeah. So he did a meditation that was called Calling in Your Retinue. And a retinue is the group of people who surrounds an important person to help them get through what they need to do. So if you think about some important official, they may have people that help them with their hair and their makeup, what they're going to say, taking care of the money things, making sure they're fed. There's this whole group of people that surround them, that support them. And I did that meditation a couple of times with him, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, I love this meditation. Who is my retinue? Who are the people that are both alive and have passed on that are here to support me? And I started visualizing them, and I could name them one by one by one. And as I worked with this longer, I started doing some art with it, and I put myself in the middle. One of the first times I did it, I put myself in the middle, and I drew a concentric circles of the people who were there to support me. And, I visualize it. And, and I think, okay, these are my inner circle. Here are the people on my outer circle, and they go out. And most recently, as I've been working on this, I've actually put myself in the middle again. And I've drawn a heart and started putting my people around. So realizing that there are people both here and on the other side of the veil that are willing to support and help me, because a lot of the things that I was thinking as I go through this is there's just nobody there.
Mm-hmm.
And once you start naming the people that you can love and trust, all of a sudden it totally changes everything for you.
Yeah.
And most recently, the way I've used this is I've been asked to talk in a state women's conference, and they gave me a lot of time, 6 weeks. And one of the first things I've done now is it's like, I'm calling in my retinue. I who's around to support me. And I've actually started inviting people to come to that, which I would never have done before, ever. But it blesses both me and them to have them come and support me. So that's been really super fun. And just an example of usually using prayers, guided prayers and visualization, to help focus you on things outside of you. Some of the other things that I have discovered is praise songs. I love music. I think almost everybody does. It makes me feel the spirit. It absolutely calms my nervous system to be able to be singing praise music at the top of my lungs. I have made a special effort to be in nature. Some of the other things is to practice that mindfulness. And almost all of these things help you practice mindfulness. It helps you be right where you are. But, in addition to that, one of the things that I use is feeling where I am.
Yeah.
If I am nervous, and I'm doing it with you right now, it's like I can feel the chair underneath my bottom. I can feel the ground at my feet. It helps, it just helps. So, and then way further down the list for me is to find somebody that can listen to you. And that did not work out at all. You mentioned the run and hide thing. That did not work out at all in those initial phases of my husband leaving. I did eventually find a coach that I could work with and talk about those things, but I did not find too many of my friendships or family. It didn't feel like a safe place for me to do that.
Yeah, I'm grateful that you shared, that you had to do things to calm your nervous system, because we talk a lot here about like processing emotions and cognitive behavioral things that we can do, which are very helpful, but you cannot do either one of those things if your nervous system is lit up. And
Yes.
so, and that's kind of a piece that goes untalked about a lot of times, is that nervous system regulation. And so though people are like, oh, meditation, or oh, like those, anything like that, a lot of people don't understand the importance of it, but that is a way, and along with all of the things that you suggested or that you shared with us, are ways to calm your nervous system, because without that, you can't even begin to make progress in other areas.
You can't feel the spirit, so you can't make progress spiritually. I mean, that's why you're stuck, is
Yeah.
you are just right there at the mercy of that primitive brain.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I feel like that so much of that is the natural woman. And we're designed to do that, but we're also designed to overcome that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
But
that's
we
like,
have to learn how to do it.
yep. It doesn't come naturally to us, I don't think. At least maybe it comes more naturally to some people. I don't know, but because I don't want to speak in generalizations, but I know it doesn't come naturally for me. So,
Well, it doesn't come naturally for me either. It
okay.
was something that I had to learn and practice.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't think we don't give it really any airtime. And when we talk about it with, in any situation, we just kind of skip over that part. So,
Well, I can tell you, I was learning thought work about the same time my husband left.
mm-hmm.
And that thought work actually made all of it much worse for me
Yeah.
as I tried to think my way
Well,
out of
because
it.
you're thinking, I should be able to choose a
Yes,
different thought here. I should be able to
yes,
think my way out of this. And your nervous system is just,
no,
it's a
yes,
wreck. And so it can't even do that. And so it comes self-sabotaging.
it
It
does.
just, it makes
Yeah,
it harder.
yeah,
But,
yes.
one of the things that I would imagine, and I guess I've seen this with other people, is that when you have a spouse or a family member leave the church, it sets you, the person who loves them and is like committed to their religion, kind of on this unexpected faith journey themselves, because there's so many questions, so many doubts, so many troublesome things that come up for you, that you have to kind of ask some questions of yourself that you've never asked before. So, how have you found that this journey has helped you grow spiritually?
In so many ways,
Mm-hmm.
maybe just because of my personality. Once I realized I was kind of a mess, and your foundations are shaken. They just are
Yeah.
shaken. Because your spouse may have some super good points that maybe you'd never noticed before. So pretty soon it's like, I don't know what I believe anymore. So I started working on it and asking myself questions. And it was part of those morning pages. I'd have a question. And, starting with simple things is like, what do I really believe for sure? And that was helpful, but even more helpful was for me to really, really examine my relationship with God and know I know that I am a beautiful, beloved daughter of heavenly parents who love me and want what's best for me. I had other beliefs that I wrote down, but practicing that one was especially helpful because it's like, whatever's going on, it doesn't matter. I know that God always has my back.
Mm-hmm.
So I started practicing believing on purpose, writing those things out. I developed a whole bunch of spiritual practices for me, especially using scriptures and meditations that I'd mentioned before, but a lot of those meditations were based on scriptures. Imagine visualizing having God go before your face and be on your right hand and on your left hand and being encompassed by his angels to bear you up and help you. You can see where that would really support you. And some of those were prayer practices as well. But what you do is that you're turning to God and you are becoming spiritually self-reliant. You can't count on anybody else in your family to support you anymore. You might not be able to count on people at church or members of your family, they don't actually understand what's going on with you. Some of the things they say and do actually hurt and damage you. So you have to work on you. In addition to that, I found some online institute classes that were really helpful to me. That was an online community that was really supportive. And the result of that was that I felt really confident and powerful in my own self, what I knew and what I believed. I could always fall back on, I'm a beautiful, beloved daughter of heavenly parents who love me and want what's best for me. I mean, that is always there. It's always available to me.
That's beautiful. Some of the church doctrines, I'm sure, have to be, and I shouldn't call them the church doctrines. I should call them the doctrines of our Savior and our heavenly parents. But some of those doctrines are, I could imagine, can cause some pain in some ways. Specifically, our doctrine of eternal families. And you talked about how much you love the plan of happiness and how it's like your own personal fairy tale story. But there can be some pain that can be caused by some of the beliefs that we have wrapped up in that. Shouldn't I be worried then? Like, my spouse and I are sealed. Now what? Like, what does this do to our eternal marriage? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, Heather, absolutely something that is like dogging you all the time. You go to church, you hear it, and you feel it. So in the last general conference, Elder Karen talked, and he talked about God being in relentless pursuit of you. And that includes all the people you love. So when I think, I'm grateful that God is in relentless pursuit of me, but I'm even more grateful that he is in relentless pursuit of all the people I love. I know that God wants them back, the picture of the shepherd. I had an experience shortly after my husband left where I was in the sealing room at the temple, and they sent me in the room before anybody else was in there, and I sat down just normally, not expecting anything, and all of a sudden I saw myself reflected singly forever. And the feelings that came up were just like a panic one. It didn't feel very good at all. And so I have memorized those feelings, and I have a strategy for when they happen. The minute that those things start happening, I realize that it's anxiety, but it's also unbelief. And I have to take a couple of deep breaths, and I have to physically turn away from the unbelief. And I now see that as like repentance. I'm turning away from this negative unbelief, and I ask for the Spirit, and I allow myself to be comforted by the Spirit. And you know how President Nelson says that the Lord loves effort? And when I first heard that, that was a hurtful doctrine, because I thought he was referring to my loved ones who, weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing. But he's referring to me. He's referring to me not being willing to do the effort to learn how to take those steps so that you can continue in faith instead of unbelief. Okay, God, how's God going to make this work together for my good? And you ask yourself those, you receive revelation, there are next steps, and then you do them. And underlying all of it is to just kind of be still and trust God.
Yeah. I have found that with most problems or situations in relationships or hurt, like worry that I have about myself or people that I love, if I can bring to remembrance who my heavenly parents truly are, I think we have a lot of mixed messaging. We're doing a lot to turn that around, but a lot of our foundation is on something we need to choose and do certain things because of fear or because of, the punishment that might happen or the lack of blessings that we won't get. But as I've come to realize that that is not God's true nature. That's not the Heavenly Mother and the Heavenly Father I believe in. I'm able to settle most of the fears that I have if I can just readjust my perspective of them.
Yes, exactly. I mean, fear is the ultimate weapon
Yeah.
that the adversary uses against us. And like I said, being able to turn right back to that faithful perspective and I think allowing yourself to receive comfort. And I think that all of us have a really hard time letting us receive anything.
Right.
And so you actually have to practice receiving love and comfort.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And I think you have to get a little bit more comfortable with the ambiguity of of what's there. Like we don't really know. Like we think we have all the answers and we use a lot of those answers in ways that are harmful or painful to us. We think, well, if he's not doing this, then, that all is lost sort of thing. But the reality of it, like Elder Kiernan said, he is in relentless pursuit of us. And I just don't think there's any way we're not all coming back to him, right? Like there's just no way. Like as I look at myself as a parent, there's nothing I wouldn't do to bring my children to me. And so we don't know, but we always know that he is working in everybody's lives. He and she are both working in everybody's life
For good.
for good.
Yes.
And they are relentlessly in pursuit of us. And that's their life's mission. And also, I can't help but think,
I love that, Heather.
yeah,
That is their life's mission.
it's their life's mission. And I can't help but think like everything we know about goal setting, and they're the ultimate goal setters, right? You don't set goals that are unachievable. So if their life's mission, if their work and their glory is to bring to pass immortality and eternal life of man, there's no way that's not an achievable goal for them, right? Like there's just no way.
Well, and see, I find that I've been distracted and thrown off by some of those. Here's what we talk about. Here's what we talk about. Here's what we talk about. And pretty soon I'm like, I'm not sure what's real. And so I've been really curious the last several months about, in particular, the doctrine of Christ. Exactly what is that? What does that mean? Just picking that apart and making that apply to me. Because you're right, there are things that we don't know, but there are some things that we do know. And we better know what we know so that we can call out that, yeah, that's where we don't know. But we do know some things. And so we have to be firm in our faith of the things that we do know, which is why all I can think about lately is the doctrine of Christ and where my foundations, how I am anchored into those foundations.
Yeah. There's strength there, right?
Yes.
Like it gets very wishy-washy if we are not focused on that, because there's a whole lot that we don't know beyond that. So
yeah, well, we know some things and we don't know some things, and we better be pretty clear on what we do know and what we don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, and be willing to be uncomfortable with the discomfort of not knowing, right? Like that's just part of the reality. Like, I'm okay that I don't know. We have to
and accept the reality, because this is hard for me. Accept the reality that there are some things we do know that feel uncomfortable, and be willing to still. It's like, I don't know how that's going to work.
Yeah.
Here, God, that's yours.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for this discussion today. I think that there are so many people who are in your shoes, whether they are keeping it to themselves or whether they are able to share it with other people. Just hearing that somebody has walked the walk that they are and, been on the journey that they're on is so helpful. Can you share with people how they can connect with you?
Absolutely, I would love to. So my website is ldslifecoach.com. And you can email me at jennifer@ldslifecoach.com. I work with women one-on-one and in small groups. And if you want to be more anonymous, I've just started a brand new podcast. It should be coming out about the time this does. And so you can listen to it from the comfort of your own home. And it's called Joyful Split Faith Marriage. So
Perfect.
the first season should be available just about the time that this comes out.
Awesome. So not to be confused, because she's ldslifecoach.com and we are LDS Life Coaches here on the
Yes.
directory.com.
We do not want to confuse them.
Although if you go to ldslifecoaches.com, you will find Jennifer there. So you'll
That's
be able
right.
to get to her.
That's right.
Yep. It's perfect. I love it. Well, thank you so much. We will link to all those things in our show notes. Thank you for sharing your heart with us today, Jennifer. And we hope that you will all join us again next time. Hey, we just wanted to thank you for spending part of your day here with us at Latter-day Life Coaches and being part of this conversation. Share this with your friends so that you can have a conversation with them on this topic as well. And as always, subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Have a good one, my friends.